Statistics is like more like a theoretical thing, right? I know that it's statistically true, but I don't think that
So
it
you
would
think
actually...
that the statistics is false when the probability is sufficiently low?
Practically speaking, yes. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, Alex, how's it going?
It's going all right. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Do you believe in God?
I do.
Okay, and which one would that be?
I believe in Jesus Christ.
Okay. Why?
Well, I mean, I think the starting place is to become a theist, right? Um,
Sure.
and so for me, I look at like sort of the increasing levels of like organization, like you go from the atom to the cell to the organ to the organelle. You see these increasing levels of complexity, and it's like an
Sure.
ant. An ant would not understand us, right?
Sure.
I, is it not sort of like folly to presume that you are the highest level organism, that you are the highest level of complexity?
I never would assume that.
So you would be open to the idea of like theism then?
Um, I guess it depends on what you mean by theism, but generally no.
Okay. So
So there could be more significantly more sophisticated aliens, for example.
okay. Well, I suppose if you look at, and I'm not any type of expert on this. I'm kind of like sitting on my porch right now. I don't have like the talking points in front of me or something like that, but there's all of these arguments, if you've ever heard of like the fine tuning of the universe and
Mm-hmm.
things such as that, where it's like the level of complexity and the way things work, it does seem to, a lot of people would say, indicate a creator, an organizer of those things. So what would you say to that? Like,
I
do you
would
think
say
it's
that
possible
I would
that...
say that the fine-tuning argument is unrelated to the complexity argument. These are kind of like two
Okay,
separate things.
okay.
On the one hand, you have the argument from complexity. It's called the teleological argument from design, if you will, which says, look at how complex everything is. It must have been designed because things look like they were designed. And then on the other hand, the fine-tuning argument is, look at these particular constants of nature. They are
Mm-hmm.
unlikely given natural processes.
Right.
So it's kind of just looking at two different types of things. So which one do you want to address? You want to talk with?
I suppose both. I mean, I'm trying. I suppose all I'm trying to make the argument right now is like, are you open to a creator? Are you open to theism at all, or does that just sound ridiculous to you?
Well, look, so I think that there are problems with a creator being that
Mm-hmm.
are not sufficiently solved to the point where I could say, oh, well, these other arguments about like design or fine tuning are actually good arguments that bring me over the edge, right?
Okay, so what would those be?
So, for example, this creator is supposed to have created space-time, so it can't really be a part of time.
Right.
And yet,
That's true.
somehow it's able to cause things. And the way I understand causation is as a temporal process. So
Hmm.
I don't, so like that seems like it's dead in the water.
Well, let me ask you that. Is Dr. Blitz? Is that your name?
Yep, you can just call me Blitz if you want.
Cool. Okay, Blitz. And again, I really don't know much about this, but like, especially physics. But think about this: isn't it true that like with the atoms and like with the way that electrons work, that whole physics on that level doesn't make sense in our world, right? In the Newtonian world, don't they contradict the atomic physics versus like the physics that you and I experience?
I mean, in a
You
sense,
know how
it
they
just
say
mean
the
means that
electron can be in the same place?
Newtonian physics is not correct at the quantum scale. That's all it
Right,
means.
exactly. Exactly. But they have contradictory laws, isn't that true? Like it can
It
the
just means that Newtonian physics is incorrect at the quantum scales.
right,
There's
but
no
it's also
contradiction if one of the things is wrong and the other one is right.
I think that they are contradictory though, because the electron behaves in ways that we could not explain anything moving here, and it would contradict like the laws that we have here.
Look, what you're saying is something along the lines of like, the laws of I don't know, what would be a good example? The constant gravitational pull on the surface of the Earth isn't true in space. Isn't that a contradiction? Like, no, it just doesn't apply. Newtonian laws just don't apply at the quantum scale. They're approximations. So it doesn't like that doesn't mean that there's a contradiction. All it means is that one of your models just isn't relevant at a particular scale.
But could any object like at the non-quantum level be in multiple places at once?
I mean,
Would
there's
it
a
change
distinction.
places based on if you observed it or not? You know,
That's not really how quantum mechanics works. The point is that the features of the quantum world, the features of the ultramicroscopic, the reason why they're so strange is because the quantum effects are not averaged over yet. So when you have a single particle, a single atom, a single electron or whatever, its quantum features are just going to be its quantum features, and those are going to be the governing features. However, when you have a trillion atoms, all of those quantum features together average out to give you something that looks classical. So there's not really an issue here.
Okay. Well, I suppose we could. I'll reduce the argument that I was going to make into maybe a lesser argument, but it's like, at least you could have things that are seemingly contradictory.
Yeah, but I think that usually just means that we're missing something.
Okay. Could you be missing God?
Could be, but you would have to
Is
provide
it
the evidence for
possible?
that.
Okay.
I mean, look, I'm humble enough to recognize that I could absolutely be wrong about whatever I believe, but if you want to convince me that this is actually something I'm wrong about, you'd have to present it. You'd have to present what I'm wrong about, right?
Sure. I guess I would think that the presumption that there is no God is almost stronger. It's a stronger set of presumptions than the presumption that there is one.
I mean, I don't know how you're gauging the strength of a presumption. They're statements
I suppose,
about the same proposition. It's just one is saying that the proposition is true, the other is saying that the proposition is false.
right, but you could draw that the other way, and you could say you're drawing the proposition of God as false.
Look. I mean, we're both making a declarative belief about, or a declarative statement about the proposition God exists. You're saying it's true.
Yes.
I'm saying it's false. Or we could both be making.
Are you saying
we both have a belief about
you
the proposition God does not exist.
Sure.
You say it's false. I say it's true. The
So then
strengths are the same.
Okay, so you're saying it's equally reasonable.
I didn't say that. I said that the strengths of the claims are the same.
Okay, so I guess what I meant to say then is I think it's perhaps almost, if not equally reasonable, then it is more reasonable to assume that there is a God, because you're right. You are working off of imperfect information, but you have to look at the information that you have. You have to look at the fact that, you look at the ant. The ant doesn't understand you, but you understand the ant.
Mm-hmm.
The level below can never comprehend the level above, right? Just as like the amoeba isn't interpreting what the ant is doing. So like, I don't know, I suppose that's why I'm saying I think it's almost a stronger presumption to presume that there is no God.
So, under your worldview,
Yeah.
is God potentially missing something even higher than it?
Well, so that gets into, once you kind of make the argument for theism and you get there, then you kind of can get there from Christianity, to Christianity, which is kind of like a slightly separate discussion. But we can go there, or I don't know if you want to just stick with the God thing or whatever you want to do.
Well, no, I mean, that doesn't seem like it addresses my question. My question was, look, you're saying, well, we look at an ant and we recognize that ants can't know anything about astrophysics. So they're missing something. And we do. So we know some stuff about, we know some stuff that ants will never know about. And you're saying, well, we could be like the ants. There could be stuff that we'll never know about, like God. So I'm just asking, look, does that apply to God? Could there be things that God will never know about?
Yeah, well, so what I'm saying is, once you get to the level of theism, then you have to have a framework with which to understand God. And I do think that gets into a kind of separate discussion of like religion.
We're not talking about a framework. I'm just using the same reasoning that you're using.
Sure.
Right?
So I would say no. I would say that God is all-knowing. that he's omnipresent, that he's all powerful, that he is the creator God of the universe.
Okay, so it seems like we're just making a argument for thee but not for me kind of thing.
I can see what you're saying. It's like, but with that, I suppose what I'm saying is it does have an endpoint. It seems to me that you're assuming the end point of the complexity of the understanding, I don't know, master of the universe is you. I'm just
No,
taking
not
it a few
assuming that.
steps
I'm just
above you
assuming
to
it.
God.
I'm just
I'm
not assuming
saying,
it's God, right?
okay, I am
I
assuming it's God, and I'm saying there is an end point, but it's not me and it's not you.
right.
It
It
is
could be
him.
some aliens that are way more advanced than us.
Well, the Christian scriptures do talk about other beings. I mean, there are angels, there are these
Yeah, but I'm
different
talking about
heavenly
aliens, not
creatures.
angels.
Right, yeah, I know, but I suppose it's a different perspective of looking at a similar idea that there are these other intelligent beings that perhaps have some level of advancement that you or I don't. But I'm just saying that Christianity does recognize that actually.
Right. So why does it have to terminate at a god and not just some super intelligent alien?
Because it's a encompassing belief. It encompasses all of life. It's that this is the source of life. This is where life came from. This is how the world was created and the universe was structured.
I don't see how that addresses my question.
Sorry, what's your question?
Why does it have to terminate at a god and not some super intelligent alien?
Um, well, the idea is that there is a creator of all things. I
Well, that's the
suppose
thing you're
why.
trying to prove, right?
Yeah, okay. So, well, where does the alien come from, I guess? Let's just go back
It
to the
evolved. Let's say
simple
it evolved
stuff.
in the same way that you and I did.
But does complexity arise from non-complexity?
Absolutely, yeah.
How so? Isn't
Uh,
isn't like what's one of those laws of thermodynamics that it's
yeah,
like
actually, I was about to
everything
mention that.
evolves into chaos or whatever?
So the second law of thermodynamics is that an isolated system has a never decreasing value of entropy, meaning that its entropy always stays
Yeah.
the same or it increases. But the interesting thing about what happens when entropy goes from low to high is that
Uh-huh.
complexity happens in the intermediary. So a good example of this that I've used often is imagine they have a cup of coffee and a jug of milk, right?
Hmm.
The entropy of that system, the cup of coffee and the jug of milk, is lower than what it would be if you mix the two together, right? Because mixing them creates more disorder, if you will. However, in the process of pouring the milk into the coffee, you get all sorts of very, very complex. Sorry, I'm getting so many phone calls. Where you get all sorts of very, very complex swirls upon swirls, fractals upon fractals in the intermediate period between low
Hmm.
entropy and high entropy. In fact, complexity is the most efficient way to generate high entropy.
Complexity is the most efficient way. But do you get sort of, I don't know, I suppose if you throw a basket of blocks on the ground, do they just, if you do that 1 billion times, are they ever going to make a building?
If you do it enough times, yeah. As long as
See, I
each
don't I
sample is
don't know if that's
statistically
true.
independent.
I don't know if that's true. I know that statistics would kind of say, oh, maybe there's a chance one day, but I don't know if that's actually true. I mean, statistics is like more like a theoretical thing, right? It's not like a
Statistics is not
reality.
really a theoretical thing, no. Statistics
Okay.
is like that's how we do experiments in the real world.
No, no, no. I know it's useful. To say it's theoretical doesn't mean to say it's non-useful, but it's like it's describing sort of abstract theoretical con.
No, but we're describing physical, concrete things, right?
Yeah, but isn't it its purpose to like describe things in theory? Like I don't know. Look it up. Look it up. Is physics or not physics? Sorry, statistics theoretical? I think it is. It's trying to describe a theoretical world. I don't think if you threw
I
the
don't know what you
blocks
mean
on the
by that.
ground.
Look, statistics is used to determine the probability of an event happening, right?
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
so, what's theoretical about that? Like,
I mean,
what is the claim here?
it's by definition theoretical.
What do you
I
mean
don't
when you
know.
say the word theoretical?
I don't think that if you threw that basket on the blocks, the basket of the blocks on the ground, like if you did it billions of times, I don't think you'd ever get a building.
So Is this just incredulity?
You
Is it
mean
just
I
like, I
don't?
don't think it's like, do you just think the statistics is wrong?
No, no, no. I don't think statistics is wrong. It's obviously used in like a million different ways,
Yeah.
insurance policies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I suppose when you take it to its limit, um, it like when you're talking about something that's one in the billions and the billions and the billions of chances, um, it's not really as relevant, I think. Like I know that it would predict that, yeah, technically it's one in the billions and the billions of chances, but I don't think that the basket of blocks would ever be a building when you threw it on the ground. I
If
don't
you
think that's actually true. I know that it's statistically true, but I don't think that
So
it
you
would
think that the
actually.
statistics is false when the
This,
probability is sufficiently low?
um, practically speaking, yes. I
I don't
suppose that
mean
is what I'm
so
saying.
practically speaking is irrelevant. Do you think that the statistics is false, as in
Well,
it's
well,
not accurately representing
if you
reality?
look at statistics as its own truth, as its own sort of boxed in, sort of caged in thing, it's like, yeah, it's statistically true.
No.
But
Do
when
you
I
think that
say,
the predictions that it makes are invalid? Do you think it makes wrong predictions when the probability gets sufficiently
well,
low?
okay, you're kind of like, that's circular because it's like you're asking statistics whether it's true according to statistics.
No, I'm not
Whether you're
asking whether
asking
it's true
whether
according to statistics. I'm asking,
you're
do you
asking.
think that the predictions that can be made using statistical methods, like, via independent samples or whatever methods you want to use,
Sure.
do you think that the predictions that are made, like the mathematical predictions, are false in the sense that they are not what happens in reality?
Well, again, statistics is not talking about reality, it's talking about probability. So when you ask me that question, you're asking me if it's true in terms of probability. And what I'm saying is it's just kind of circular.
That Look, so the way, I mean, it depends on your particular perspective on statistics, on probabilities and things like that. But if you're doing statistics, often you're doing frequentist statistics, which means that if you say that there is a 10% chance of XYZ happening, what that means is that if you run the experiment 100,000 times, 10% of the outcomes will be XYZ. That's the frequentist interpretation of probability. And when we're talking about statistics in the sense that we are right now, that's the relevant interpretation. So are you saying that if you were to do something a billion times and statistics tells you that the probability of it happening even once is, say, 1 in a million, then that means that you should have that happen 1,000 times when you run it a billion times? Or do you think that that's wrong?
I think that, and I'm not the
Like,
most
what would actually
sophisticated.
happen?
Sure, sure. I think that I'm not the most sophisticated speaker at this. But obviously, if you toss a coin 50 times, it's not going to be actually 50-50, right? So the probability is like distinct from reality. We both know that. Okay. And what
But
I'm
nobody
saying,
says that it would actually be 50-50. You could figure out the probability of it being actually 50-50, but that's not the claim that statistics would make.
okay, even if you found like a coin, I guess, that was perfectly weighted and thrown the correct way and the probability was exactly 50-50, it wouldn't actually be 50-50 if you threw it
You
a
wouldn't,
thousand times, right?
if you did the statistical analysis of the system, you wouldn't expect to get 50-50 exactly. That's not the prediction of statistics. Statistics is not, if the probability is 50%, then it will happen exactly 50% of the time. That's not
Okay, so if
that's
you toss a coin 1,000 times, what's the probability for heads and tails?
the probability for heads. And are you asking how many heads are you likely to get?
Yes.
So the most likely number of heads you will get would be 500, but that doesn't mean that it's probable to get 500 because there's a lot of options. So
Right, but the
the probability of
statistics.
getting 500 is
Okay.
slightly larger than the probability of getting 499 and
Okay, so most
501 and so
likely
on.
50-50, right?
Most likely, but that doesn't mean it's probable.
Okay. All right.
For
I
example, if you have 100 different outcomes and one of your outcomes has a 2% chance of happening and all of your
right.
other outcomes have less than 1% chance of happening, then that means that the 2% thing is the most likely thing to happen. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean that it is likely to happen, right? It still only has a 2% chance of happening. It's just the most likely outcome.
Okay. Yeah, and I see what you're saying. So, but it could easily be like 53-47 or whatever, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's
So,
exactly what you would expect given any sort of introduction to statistics course.
okay. Well, I don't know. I've read that, like, if you look at the odds of like all of this complexity arising from nothing, this is why I was using the example of like taking the basket full of blocks, throwing them
Mm-hmm.
on the ground, and it becoming a building. Like, yeah, you're right. Like, statistically, it could happen if you did it
Mm-hmm.
billions of times or whatever. But I don't think it actually would. And what I'm saying is statistics has limitations in my mind. Like, I think as you approach the limit of like statistically what can happen, I think it starts to become like unrealistic, I guess. And that's just, I know, like, you're like, oh no, that's not true, but I don't know. I don't know how to explain myself better than
It
to
just
say
seems like
that.
it's counterintuitive to you that this could ever happen. But it being counterintuitive is not particularly compelling evidence that it could never happen.
Okay. So, but would you say if you look at if I guess if you look at the chances of that, and I don't and I'm sure you seem like you think about this topic a lot, so I'm sure you've looked into that and come across
Mm-hmm.
that many times. I guess if you look at the odds of that or whatever, the presumptions that are necessary to get there, and then again the presumptions that are necessary to say no, it's actually created, someone built that building with blocks. Are you sure that your presumptions aren't requiring more than my presumptions?
So my presumptions is just require that the universe is old and that the universe is big, which both of which are true, right? So that
I
they're less
see.
presumptions and more evidenced, right?
I see. But isn't the odds of that happening still like really low?
If the universe is big enough and old enough, then no, and the odds are not low.
Okay. All right. Well, so that's that point. By the way, my phone's on 4%, so if it
You're
dies,
fine.
I'll let you know. But
I understand.
Dr. Blitz, the quantum stage. In the realm of science, he's all the rage. With a mind like lightning, blurry and fierce, he shatters limits.